Well, look who it is. It's Chris Williams.
Well, hello, Ike. Thank you for having me back. I think I know what that means.
Yeah, it's a Adam Mattera day again.
Yes, a special edition.
This is crazy. He's been on like a half a dozen times.
That's right.
I'm loving every minute of it.
Yeah, we get a lot of good info, and I know all the Sheena lovers and
Yeah.
now just general music lovers are going to love this particular.
Oh, totally. Yeah. He's got so much going on, and I can't wait to hear all about it. How's your summer going?
So far, so good. It's going very quick.
Yeah.
June didn't feel like summer here on the East Coast.
I know.
And now July, so I can't believe it's already like halfway through July.
Time to put up the Christmas tree.
I know, it's so crazy.
I know. That's the thing. It's like I'm not a big fan of summer. I don't like sweating. I just don't. So if I'm, in an environment where it's really hot, I love the air conditioning setting. Give me that and I'm good. But if I'm outside, like I was supposed to go to Vegas and I see it's like 117. Like, not happening.
Yeah, I'm the same way. But I do prefer summer over cold. I would rather sweat than be cold. Yeah. Oh, I can't stand being cold now. Yeah. I'm literally an old person. If the AC is on in someone's house and it's too cold, I have to have a sweat. I'll ask them for a blanket. And
really?
Yeah.
Oh God, we would never be roommates.
No,
Ugh.
It wouldn't work.
All right, Chris. So today, as always, we are sponsored by Uberlube. Yes. Uberlube.com. You can find all their fabulous products on their website. They will be sponsoring us once again as we travel with 50 Shades of Gay. And they will be supporting my comedy action play, Bitter Betties, which is coming out finally August 12th in New York City at the Red Eye Theater. That show has been cursed since the pandemic. So I'm hoping it goes off without a hitch.
It will. I know it will. And Uberlube will be supporting you, so that's even better.
Yes, I'm very excited about that. So
think of all the sheen hair in the audience.
Well, let's hopefully none of them are on the street doing what they're not supposed to be doing either with it. We've seen a lot of that in the city. It's ridiculous.
Oh, really?
Oh, my God. It's like 42nd Street all over again back in the 80s.
Yeah, I heard they're having some problems there.
I don't know what's happening. But if I have a chance to get a date, Chris, I'm in.
Well, it sounds like the streets are full of them. So,
and another thing, Chris, we can be seen on rippedtv.live. The episodes air immediately 1 week after the show airs on YouTube, so that's exciting.
Well, look at you guys building.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what we're building.
You and Tim have really taken this thing to another level. I love listening to it.
Well, I thought you said a loveless level.
That too.
Oh, God. So let's just go right in, Chris. We got
Our guest today is returning for the 6th time to discuss the 8th release of the Cherry Red RT Industries Sheena Easton reissue campaign, the vinyl of 1981's You Could Have Been With Me, which I happen to have a copy of.
Yes.
With the iconic cover.
Oh, I can't wait to talk about that. Right?
And his name.
Well, just so you know, Sheena isn't the only thing that Adam is working on. He's going to talk about a few other projects that he has just released and what's coming up for the rest of the year.
Yeah, we're looking forward to a very full-packed year for Mr. Adam Mattera.
Hey, Adam.
It's good to be back. I can't believe it. 6 times.
6 times.
Yeah.
This is insane. I feel like we should reward you with something.
Yeah.
I think.
How about an album?
Look at that.
I'm glad you got yours. I'm glad you got yours okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, totally. This is, and like Chris said, the iconic cover. It's amazing. And I think it was Brian Aris that did this, right?
I believe so, yeah.
I shot all of her first few out. Oh, the first 3, I think. Maybe the 4th as well.
Unbelievable. I mean, it is flawless. the eyes, the hair, the look.
The icy blue vinyl.
Icy blue vinyl, yeah. And we've got a new, there was no inner sleeve on the original album. So
no.
With a new inner sleeve cover.
That was one of the exciting things we always we open up the album and we were hoping that there'd be the liner notes and the pictures. And when there wasn't, we were like, well, I'll get my money back.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so amazing. Congratulations on this, Adam. So tell us, how long did this take to put together?
That was actually quite one of the most straightforward one probably so far in a way, because literally all the masters for that album were on two master tapes, for side A and side B of the original album.
Yes.
So it's a matter of locating those original masters, getting them remastered, and then creating the artwork. So it was a relatively straightforward one. And of course, as there was no bonus material, there was no delays with waiting for additional clearances and stuff, because that becomes more complicated when you have to find unissued material. It's a little bit more. There's more hurdles to jump through to a certain extent. But that was pretty straightforward. Of course, it takes a long time as well because of the delays. I think we talked about this before. The pressing plants for vinyl is months. So it has to be completed. It was completed months ago. That came out maybe 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. I'm not sure now. 2 weeks ago. Went to the plant probably about 4 months ago. I imagine.
Wow.
Oh wow.
But
so they're still backlogged.
Oh God, yeah, they're all still. It's just a long. That seems to be the regular, the standard thing now. They just take.
Yeah, someone just told me that Metallica actually built their own record plant to help them with their vinyl.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, would you say?
I'm sure if you're Adele or someone, I'm sure major labels could, pay extra, prioritize the stuff, and they probably don't have to. There are probably ways around it, but I think most companies have to delay it.
Now, do you find it that it's easier to put the vinyl version together than the CDs? Probably not, right?
No. The vinyl is much more. Doing the deluxe CDs is a lot longer because there's a liner notes which take a long time.
Okay.
The songwriters and anyone involved, producers,
bonus material.
So that takes a long time. There's a lot more pages for the booklet, and all the additional material that we do for the deluxe versions. So so actually the vinyl is much more straightforward in a way. Yeah.
And I believe this is the original UK version, right? And I believe also it probably was the intended US version, because as we've discussed in a previous episode, I believe they swapped out Isn't It So and When He Shines at the last minute. And the US album cover actually credits Isn't It So as if it's on the album, but it wasn't.
Oh, really? It was actually written on the album?
Yes, I do have that.
On the US version, it's the string arrangement on Isn't It So is credited. And I think what happened was she went on The Tonight Show and performed When He Shines, which was not on the debut as it was in the UK.
Yeah.
And then there were a lot of people calling record stores, because that's what they did at that time, asking for that song when it was going to be released. And the record company then swapped out at the last minute Isn't It So and When He Shines.
Well, the story that Florrie Palmer told me, who wrote When He Shines, when I was talking to her for the debut album, was that the US record company was she didn't mention the TV appearance, but it all makes sense, really. That makes it more make sense. Is that the US label execs saw When He Shines as like a mega hit record and wanted to hold it back for the second album.
Okay.
And so it was one of the tracks removed from one of the two tracks removed from the first album, the debut album, and held back for the second one. So. And I guess they thought, let's swap one ballad, Isn't It So, for another ballad. Because for some reason, I think someone did explain to me, I think it's due to something to do with how the rights are worked out and the points that allocate in terms of the publishing stuff. At the time, 10 tracks were preferable in America.
Yeah.
Like the debut album had 12 tracks, and Madness Money Music had 12 tracks, but in America they all had 10.
Right.
So they didn't have that issue with what you could have been with me because it's a 10-track album, but they did, as they'd held back When He Shines, they pulled Isn't It So off. So you're saying on the US album, the credits for the musicians for Isn't It So are on there, but the actual track wasn't listed.
No. Yeah, I have that. I have the album still, believe it or not.
Right. I think the sequence might be different as well.
Yes, it was. Yeah, I think Savoir Faire was the second track, and they reversed it.
You Could Have Been With Me was the second track in the U.S., and Savoir Faire was they swapped those two. You're right.
Right. So there's a little bit of messing around. But I think it's an interesting album. It kind of feels very much like a transitional album to me.
Yeah.
The first and the third.
Yeah.
And in some ways, some parts are more accomplished than the debut.
Yeah.
They're better. Her singing's better, and it's more musically grown up in ways.
Yeah.
Certain elements are kind of trying different things.
Yeah.
Different directions. It goes a bit more rocky than she'd certainly been before. It's interesting. I think it's a strong record.
Yeah, I actually like it. I know a lot of people prefer I think it sounds like a lot of people prefer the first album to this one, but I actually like this one better. I do. I think she sounds more confident in her vocal ability. She just, she hit this success. It's not like she's entering the studio, and just a whole different mindset. And with Chris Neal, who also is probably now realizing more about what her potential with her vocals could be. The material, I think, is more challenging vocally than the first album. And also, I think there was definitely more of an R&B undertone on some of the tracks.
I would definitely see some of them. Like the other ones kind of like Johnny and Joey, they kind of that new wave-ish kind of, like they were steering towards that a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. My only gripe was I really felt like A Letter from Joey was a missed opportunity in terms of a single. I wish they had come out with that as the first single.
I think it is some country. I remember I was doing the research for it.
Yeah, you're right. I forget which one. It was released as single somewhere in Europe, but I don't.
And its placement on the record suggests it's the first track on side 2.
Yeah.
Suggests kind of that's where they usually place a single. So,
like an interesting mix of like a dance groove, but also like a rock song, which is kind of like Ike was describing. That was a lot of new wave back then. A lot of new wave songs had that rock rhythm structure, but you could also be dancing to them,
Right.
I think when they were putting together, certainly I spoke at length with Christopher Neal about the record. And I got the impression, one of the things, they were reacting in a way to different things that were going on, as all producers and all songwriters teams are constantly. It's about what's going on in the environment. And so between her first record and the second record, you'd had a lot more sort of new wave pop come in, like Sheena Easton and all that stuff. So there was a feeling of that in the air that they were reacting to. And also, of course, she had become a big star in America by the time they were putting this out together.
Right.
A lot more lyrically and musically awareness of the American market that wasn't really present in the same way on the first album.
Yeah, the first album definitely is more British sounding, I think, because they really aimed for that market. And you're right, this album, they even went with a country songwriter named Deborah Allen for one of the tracks. And at that time, right in the early 80s, country pop was so popular on adult contemporary stations. So they really were aiming for that market here with this album as well. It's a good balance between the two, I think.
Right. Yeah, the first two. And especially with the opener track, A Little Tenderness, you could hear how her voice was very full, right? Because this must have been recorded right before she came to The Tonight Show in the States. Because when she did When He Shines, it sounded much fuller than the record version, which was recorded probably like 2 years prior, right? Or a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. When was it? When he?
It was August of '81.
August of '81, right?
So it was about a year and a half, probably, when it was first recorded.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she was definitely in the summer. This was recorded in the summer of '81. So
right, and you could tell the difference. And she was probably on the road traveling in the UK, doing live shows and recording.
And just the way, even because if you listen to the first album too, her vocals are mixed a little behind everything. It's not as clear. It's not as up front and center as it would become in pretty much every album thereafter.
Yes, much more upfront.
And I know that was definitely part of her wanting that sound. I remember reading an interview with her where she said that even with dance producers, she would let them know before beginning that the beat cannot overtake the vocal. So that it has to have a good melody. Her voice has to be front and center, and then the beat can, So I think that was part of it too, but you could definitely hear that there's a focus on her vocals here that wasn't there in the first.
Yeah, A Little Tenderness. You just mentioned Little Tenderness. That was one. Peter. That was a Leeson and Vale song.
Yes.
Who were a songwriting team who worked with Sheena a lot and Christopher Neal a lot for those first three albums. They keep seeing their names up again and again, and. Peter Vale said that their Little Tenderness was there. They were kind of doing Smokey Robinson, The Miracles. That's what he was thinking, trying to do like a Motown-y thing, which you can hear it. I mean, the production doesn't overemphasize that, but it's got that kind of a nod towards that in it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that finger snapping beat. Yeah,
yeah.
And that she. I don't know if there was talk about releasing that as a single.
It was a single in
one of the
Scandinavia and Ireland, certain countries.
Which to me, I would have figured that would have been the second single because it was on most of the talk shows in the States. She was doing the song.
And Solid Gold. She even did it on Solid Gold, which was like the top of the pops here, Adam.
Merv Griffin.
Yeah, she was on that a lot, wasn't she?
Yeah.
First few albums.
And she said that Leeson and Vale, in one of the appearances on American Bandstand, she said they were two of her favorite writers at the moment.
Right. Well, their songs, when you certain songs they wrote for her, No One Ever Knows on the first album, and another song called Family of One that they did, which was a B song.
Oh, love that song.
Yeah, they're amazing songs. Lyrically, they were much more. They were really attuned to where she was at in her life. They had a sort of personal quality to them, I think, that she could relate to and really eke the most drama out of.
Right.
Yeah. I Sat in the Rain was another one.
Oh, another one.
Oh, yeah.
So good. Yeah, it's a match made in heaven. It was like she was with them as Dionne Warwick was with Burt Bacharach. The collaborations worked amazingly.
Yeah.
So, but before we even jump in, one of the questions we got from the fans from Sheena Easton's site, Kay, as you know, Kay, wants to know, congratulations, number one, on the vinyl release. Why wasn't Just Another Broken Heart released as a single for the U.S. market? There was only one single in the U.S. from You Could Have Been With Me, right? No, there was actually two, right? And did the James Bond song interfere with other releases from the album? That's a good question. That's true. I never thought about that part.
What was the last bit? Did the James Bond song...
Did For Your Eyes Only interfere with other songs?
No, I think For Your Eyes Only interfered with the first album because and in particular Modern Girl, I think Modern Girl may have went a little higher in the charts, but For Your Eyes Only, the movie was coming out as that song entered the top 20. So they had to release the single. And then I think it was another... I think in November this album came out, so
yeah.
I don't think it interfered with the second album. I think it interfered with the first album. There may have been a third single even from the first album had For Your Eyes Only not been.
Yeah, well, it's weird. Well, because it was that staggered thing between the album came. Take My Time was created for the UK market, obviously. It was created for the market. They knew it was going to go in America, but it had come out in Britain and the singles had come out in a different way. So there's a lot more. It wasn't. Now everything is in sync and everything international. When you look back then, different singles were coming out at different times in different territories. So there were 5 singles from Take My Time in the UK.
Right.
In the debut album, which was called Sheena Easton in America, there were 3?
Mm-hmm.
No,
right.
2.
Just 2.
On what? You Could Have Been With Me?
No, on the first album.
Oh, right. Modern Girl, and then it went right to For Your Eyes Only, because it was Modern Girl was a hit in the summer here.
Yeah.
So everything was kind of slightly out of sync, which was so it was more than just it being about For Your Eyes Only. Everything was out of sync. And then she had so much success with that debut, took off, and obviously took off in America as well. And so they were catching up with themselves.
Yes.
One thing that Neil told me was that EMI. Initially EMI in the UK, when the first 2 singles in Britain were in the top 10 at the same time, were like, we need the album out quick, and so it was a rush to the debut album. And then the debut album takes off in Britain, she's having all hits in Britain, then she takes off in America, has a #1, having huge success. Then Bond comes along, which they didn't expect, and of course it's this huge opportunity that becomes an international hit. And then it was like, do a second album. So there was a huge pressure. So your gap between the first and second album coming out is very short.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't uncommon, and in fact, it was common for an album then. People would put out an album once a year. Everyone put out an album once a year. Yeah. She was like putting out the gap between the first and second was like 6 months or something.
Yeah, and that actually wasn't too uncommon for a new artist. Because usually a new artist didn't tour on the first album, so the record company wanted them to have that second album out pretty quickly. So it usually would be like a 6 to 8 month, and then you'd start seeing the year difference because they'd start touring then.
Right. And also at that stage, to go back to the question about Another Broken Heart, at that stage everything was being led still by the UK.
Right.
So they were deciding when the first singles came out and what the singles would be and so on. To a certain extent, they were leading it in that way. Certainly they were ahead in time. So Just Another Broken Heart came out because they thought it was a surefire hit in Britain because it had that new wave-ish feel. Right. And speaking to I think it was Peter Vale. Let me hope I'm not getting it wrong. Yeah, I think it's another Leeson and Vale song, isn't it? I'm pretty sure it's another Leeson and Vale song.
Yeah, I believe so.
And their demo was a lot more new wavy. You see, you play me the demo, and it's much more like Police or something. Yeah. Kind of much sparser, but. So that the new waveness was even more apparent. The punky new wave element was even more apparent in the demo. It's still there in the finished song. The label thought it would be huge, and it wasn't as big a hit in Britain. It didn't make the top 20 in Britain. It got number 33. So it did okay, but compared to how she had been going, it wasn't the big hit they wanted. And so I think America was then reacting to that. It's like, well, this hasn't worked.
Right.
Let's move on. And so they put the first single in Britain. The first single in America was the UK second single, which was You Could Have Been With Me, which I think was the right decision. Well, I mean, we could all be retrospective and say, well, maybe they should have done this or should have done that. But certainly You Could Have Been With Me worked for her.
It was a hit, so it worked. Yeah,
it did. But I wonder if Just Another Broken Heart would have exploded here because it was already, she didn't have any ballads, really, right? For Your Eyes Only was the first one. That was a hit.
In America, yeah. For Your Eyes Only was
right.
Obviously, she'd had When It Shines already in the minute in Britain, but in America they hadn't pulled that as a single. So For Your Eyes Only was huge. So maybe they could have gone with an up-tempo track. Maybe they could have gone with Little Tenderness first in America.
Right. I would have thought they would have.
A Letter from Joey.
Yeah. A Letter from Joey.
Yeah, and I'm shocked also that here we didn't put For Your Eyes Only on the second album because that would have made the album sell even better.
Yeah, it would make sense. And
I think that might have been like something with the record company that.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, Liberty
covered the soundtrack. Yeah.
Yeah, because how great would that have been? They already had a top 10 hit off the album.
Yeah. Yeah. There was some agreement. I think sometimes the soundtracks make an agreement that it's exclusive for that album, but you can use it for our greatest hits.
Yeah, because it would have made sense for Fiorez to do it.
Wasn't Kenny Rogers on that label?
He was.
I think so,
right? Yeah. He had something to do with it.
Which was another. It was like a subsection of EMI. It was a division of EMI.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was affiliated, but not exactly the same.
Right.
So, I don't know. So yeah, Horizon they didn't. But anyway, that's there. That's how it happened.
So we have another question from Peter, and right. Peter wants to know. Peter wrote a really great long email, and I don't know if we're going to get to all the questions, but he did want to know why Sheena wasn't as successful in the UK as she was in the US, Japan, Latin America. Because at the time, he figured like when Sugar Waltz was released, it would have been huge in the UK.
Sure. Well, initially, she was, of course, very successful in Britain.
Yeah.
Like, she was everywhere. So when the documentary The Big Time came out, she had 2 records. After that, she had 2 singles in the top 10. She couldn't have been bigger. And she was on every TV show and whatever.
Right.
By this point, when You Could Have Been With Me came out, she was still everywhere and doing TV specials. But even by Mad Fun in Music, she was still on the doing a half-hour television special on the Royal Variety Show. So
right.
Those first 3 years of her career, she was very present. But the hits and the radio wasn't, after the first album, she wasn't having big hits anymore. By the time it got to, and America was retaking off, so she made a decision to really focus on America.
Mm. And
quite rightly, and everything took off in America after Telephone. You know, she had that whole new second wave, really.
Yeah.
Yes, which is even bigger than the first wave for her in America. But Britain had totally called to her. They were still promoting, but it was falling, and she was still coming over a bit, and it was falling on deaf ears. The press was very negative,
right?
Turned on her, and I think there was an element then of a feeling of you've left us,
abandoned, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Turn your back. You know that. I think a similar thing happened with someone like Tracy Ullman as well.
Mm-hmm.
Different field she was working in, but there was that sort of like you belong to us feeling. And so when, as the Scots felt it about Sheena, the British felt it about Sheena, that she would like. There was a sense of like she's gone and she's left us, but she gets to turn her back on us and go to America. And I think there was an element of that. Because they were good records. You know, there's no reason why Telephone was a hit record. You know, it should have been a hit.
Right. Yeah, because it was definitely, it had that different sound. And that's definitely what UK always had the different sounds that I loved, you know, compared to what we had here in the States. They were thinking outside the box. And I thought Telephone was one of those.
Yeah.
Was Gloria and Mickey, were they big hits in the UK?
Right.
So, I mean, then there's no reason why that shouldn't have been then. You know?
Yeah.
But that's another thing Peter did mention in his email, because he said, and he brought Olivia Newton-John into it as well. He said, was it because the UK thought that Sheena and Olivia were just uncool to the British buying public?
I think there was an element of that as well. I mean, I don't know if it's interesting because the gatekeepers that you had it back in the day is so different now, you know, where the barrier between the public and the music is, the gatekeepers aren't there anymore. You know, back in the day, whoever the radio programmers, the TV bookers would decide really what would make it through. So if the radio programmers at Radio 1 or Radio 2 in Britain at the time didn't want to play a Sheena record, people wouldn't hear it. You know, maybe get an appearance on a TV show or two, but unless they're hearing it over and over again, they're not really gonna break through. Now you don't have that because people have artists have a much more direct relationship with their public, with the internet. People can stream things immediately. Things are released internationally. It's so different. So I don't know whether it was so much that the public had a problem with Sheena or anything. Although, like I say, there was that sense of maybe she's left us, but that was coming from the media. I don't know. Right. It's hard to really. But yeah.
Well, I can tell you, I remember talking to a bartender from the UK here in New York, and I told him that I liked Sheena, and he started with Venom, going into she's full of herself. She left, and I remember telling him, you know, she talks nothing but nicely about Scots people and, you know, her home, and but there was definitely a perception that he got, which must have come from the media, that she had, abandoned her home,
Yeah, there also was that incident much later in the late 80s, when she went back and did a show in Scotland, circa The Lover and Me, and she got things thrown at her on stage.
Mm-hmm.
That was her first appearance on stage in Scotland.
The big day.
Going back to Scotland, and it didn't go down well. So there's that element, isn't there? It's interesting what happens to some people and some not others. You know what I mean? Like Duran Duran became big internationally and in America.
Yeah.
Never an element of you've abandoned us.
I think it's what you're describing, the gatekeepers, if the public had heard some of the music and had responded positively to that, they probably would have ignored some of that.
Yeah.
And she would have been back more. She always said that. If they play the albums or they play the music, I would come back here. I'd be on TV more. I'd be doing more live performances, but that wasn't happening.
Yes. And I think there's also an element with Sheena, it was such a strong image people had in their mind of, there was such a strong impression of the big time, this young girl who's like a ingenue who's made it, and she's this down to earth girl next door, blah, 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 that she was allowed to grow up in America in a way that she wasn't allowed to grow up in Britain as well, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So when she was doing the record with Prince and whatever, and doing more it was like, oh my God, what's she doing? And that's not her. We don't, there was that response. I was just like, well, she's done loads of stuff.
Well, I think her former manager, prior to her shifting, wasn't even behind the whole Sugar Walls, the look change. I think he wasn't behind it as well, and that could have been what shifted the UK as well. No,
right. What her first manager, Dee Carlin.
Right.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that story. But definitely there was after the third album. Already by the third album, she was spending most of her time in America. She was still living in America. Mm-hmm. But the transition happened after the third album, really. I mean, the best kept secret.
There was. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the fourth album was, I think she brought a home here in the end of 82. Her base became the United States, definitely for that fourth album. And Deke was still her manager at the time. I believe she said that the reason that there was a change in management was because Deke was based in the UK. And she realized that most of her appearances were going to be in the US.
Yeah.
And then Ike's right. There's an interview with Deke where he says that this is his perspective. I've never heard this in any interview from her, but when he heard Sugar Walls, or that she was going to be doing Sugar Walls, or when she recorded Sugar Walls and played it for him, he said, I can't be your manager if you release this. This is the end of your career if you do this.
Yeah.
And that's, but you don't know what's, it could have had nothing to do with that. And he's just, putting that out in the public as a public, I left her and,
Yeah, I think a lot of it was abandonment. She left, she went to America, worked with American musicians, and that eventually caught on, especially since it was the third album. That's when things started to go down. The fourth album, actually.
In the UK, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the third album, As My Music, a brilliant album, kind of commercially didn't quite connect. It was a dip.
Yeah.
They really, the fourth album with Best Kept Secret, the first American album, really, there was determination and kind of like that's a refocus. It's like a reboot.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. That's a good perspective, Adam, because normally before the advent of, reality TV shows, especially, you never got to see a person as a person.
Right.
And with flaws, the voice cracking during Modern Girl, the first day, the nerves getting the best of an artist. And you don't see that. You see the packaging already. And so the US knew nothing about that. So It was just the perspective of an artist who changed their image and, but in the UK, it was, we know you. Mm-hmm. We know where you came from.
Right.
And what are you doing looking like this now?
Yeah,
you know, we remember when you looked like this.
The girl next door. Yeah.
And like a bit like We Own You as well.
Right. Oh, good one. I like that one. Yeah. It's a little Ike Turner, right?
Yeah, because she was so big on that first record that like people were doing like on comedy shows, they would do on 9 O'Clock News, where there would be a sketch and there'd be like somebody dressed up in a jumpsuit miming, doing a parody version of 9 to 5 or whatever. You know, she was like a cultural reference point.
Right. People
have her hair done like her.
Right. Yeah. Oh God, that was the rage when I was in high school. You know, in 2001. And everyone wanted the short hair. The girls were doing the hair short. When they saw her on the Oscars doing For Your Eyes Only, the girls were all trying to get the hair done like her.
Right.
I remember. It was a look, you know?
Yeah.
And so we have another question in the You Could Have Been With Me avenue here. And it's from Alex. And he wants to know why Cherry Red decided not to release a deluxe CD of You Could Have Been With Me. And I guess he said that their excuse was there is no additional bonus tracks or not enough. Because he thinks that the remastered CD would have been a great idea with a booklet and everything.
Yeah, right. Well, the idea is that for the deluxe edition, the idea was to give as much extra material, to do them as double discs, with either additional a DVD or a CD like we did with Private Heaven. But there just wasn't enough material to do that with this album. There were no additional. Yeah, I mean, that's still a slim possibility. We could find uncover something like those. Sometimes you get something done. There's an unlisted track that's hidden at the back of the thing, and we get it. But from what I've looked at so far through the vaults in the US and America, there is no additional material. So the only additional track to speak of at this point in this album would be the B-side, Family of One. I suppose you could put on For Your Eyes Only.
Right.
That's not really, but that's not enough to do 2 discs.
Right.
And single discs aren't really viable. Cherry Red doesn't do so. So really
this, but this, just so all the viewers know and the listeners know, this will be included in the end of this campaign. Will include a box set of every CD, remastered. And Family of One would be on that as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
One of my favorite songs, literally, that in her catalog. I just love her voice. As it progressed, you could tell it was getting a little more soulful. When she was singing, she was actually telling a story to me in that particular song.
Family of One's one of my favorite tracks from this era. One of my favorite tracks from this era.
It's very Alicia Keys-ish.
Yeah.
It's
very soulful.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way, but it is. Yeah.
Well, thank God she didn't wear makeup like Alicia Keys does.
But yeah, going back to what the question, the thing, so the ones that are being released as deluxe editions, there's that we want to make it much value as possible for people. So there's material on there that wouldn't necessarily be on the box set. So there's extra stuff, so you get extra value. So you're buying it to rebuy stuff. We want to do that, but doing a straight ahead 1 disc reissue of this didn't make sense because there wasn't enough material. There's only a couple of tracks to really add at this stage, anyway. And the box set will come out at the end, and so I want there to be a lot of material on there that people.
So. Perfect. So, Alex, coming out soon, the box set You Could Have Been With Me will be in there. It's going to be amazing. We can't wait.
It's going to come out. It will come out. Yeah.
Yep.
The master stuff will come out and more on the box at the end of once we've got through issuing everything. Yeah. Maybe in a year or so.
So, what's next on the releases, which I think is September, if I'm not mistaken?
So, it's now been scheduled. Yeah. So, the next thing to come out will be Madness Money Music, which will come out as a single vinyl, with the UK track listing, not the abbreviated.
So it'll have 12 tracks on that.
It'll have 12 tracks, yes.
Original from the UK release. Yeah, that's amazing.
UK sequence. And there is a bonus. There is a deluxe edition as well, because there's a lot of bonus material, which has 5, is it bonus tracks? Multiple bonus tracks. It's got all the original about 12-track album, all the B-sides, 2 completely unheard ever before songs that I found, which are great. One in particular is fantastic. It's never came out. It's unbelievable. Written by a song called Woman. It's called Woman. I can tell you that. Written by Sue Quinn.
Oh,
writer who wrote
Weekend in Paris.
Yeah.
Second?
She wrote Weekend in Paris, right?
Absolutely. And she also wrote Isn't It So?
Ah.
So on Isn't It So, it's credited to someone called Kathleen something. I can't remember who it's credited to. It's a different name it's credited to.
Kathleen Floyd.
Yeah, which is her.
All right. So Woman, is that the one that's really the incredible track you're talking about by Sue Quinn? Oh, yes. I can't wait.
Yeah. Not to be confused with One Man Woman, because when I found it in the Vaults Festival, I was like, this is track or Woman? It must be One Man Woman. They just shut it down. And so it was like, but it actually turned out to be an complete thing.
I can't wait.
The whole story behind that, which Sue Quinn told me, which I'll talk to you about when it comes out.
Yeah.
And then there's alternate versions of a couple of songs.
Alternate versions of a couple of songs, yeah. Madness, Money and Music and Weekend in Paris. Yeah, alternate versions of those. I mean, they're not drastically different, but they're different vocals.
Yeah.
Alternate version. And then there's also, of course, the long 12-inch remix of Chris and the Rain is on there as well. Plus, there is a second disc, which is the Act 1 special.
Oh my God!
And the videos from
sweet.
Machinery, Ice Out in the Rain. Yes. Nice.
And also
finally.
Yeah.
Are You Man Enough? Is that the video?
There is a video for You Man Enough. Yeah.
This is exciting.
The next thing's come. That's done, and it's
awesome.
I see.
I hope people who haven't seen Act 1. I mean, it's unbelievable. When you look at that special, it's one of the last of those types of specials, the variety special with an actual storyline almost.
Oh yeah, it's quite old. In that way, it's quite old.
It's like the last of those 70s variety shows, which we used to, every pop star used to be, have a variety show.
They all did.
Vocally, I mean, A Song for You, Out Here on My Own. I mean, those were just some of her best recordings. And that wasn't live? Some of those, were they?
Yeah, they were all live except for He's a Rebel.
Okay.
He's a Rebel was recorded in a studio, and they lip synced because she was playing 3 different characters. Remember?
Right. Right.
And but everything else was live with an orchestra. I believe it was Peter Matz.
Yes.
Matz, who did.
He did all the classic Streisand TV specials.
Yeah.
And so he arranged them.
As well as the director, Dwight Hemian. He did Barbara's couple of specials. Yeah, which is so ironic because she did sound like that the Streisand on Out Here on My Own and a little bit of Song for You when she was belting it out. It was just incredible. There'll be nothing like it ever again.
And again, what amazes me when I watch that, she's only 2 years into this career and is really, her performances on that special are that of a seasoned pro. It's unbelievable. Like even the 3 where she's playing the 3 different characters as a girl group.
Yeah.
She just went in there and just did it. And I'm sure she banged that out in, less than a few days, just to get that special done. So it's remarkable to watch.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Even at the earliest stage of her career, it's like the way in which she was kind of doing, how she was capable of handling different genres and different things.
Right.
Impressive. Not many vocalists could do that and handle it the way she did. Even on stuff on You Could Have Been With Me, there's a real range, and like we said, there's a real range of material there.
Oh yeah.
The big ballad stuff, really like sparse ballad, like Isn't It So? Thing like Johnny. And
Telephone Lines were very R&B-ish.
Yeah.
Telephone Lines. and Savoir Faire are my favorite tracks.
Oh yeah, I love Savoir Faire.
Savoir Faire is like very Steely Dan. I think she was a big Steely Dan fan, but the guy who wrote that, I believe, was her guitarist, Phil Palmer. And let me just see. Yeah, Peter Vale and Phil Palmer. Phil Palmer was her guitarist, I believe, her road guitarist, and
they wrote Savoir Faire.
Yeah, and I think he was. I don't know if she said or he wrote it for that reason, but definitely Steely Dan influence. It sounds like that era of Steely Dan.
When I spoke to Peter Vale about that one, he who was who wrote it, he and worked on Phil Palmer, the guitarist on it. He referenced Steely Dan as
see,
where they were going. Yeah, so that is such a leap from the first album,
right?
In terms of like sophistication, and that's another one that's kind of quite clearly like that's so much more American, like process, like telephone lines. On telephone lines, she's talking about dimes.
Yeah. Well, Steve Kipner. That was
and the vocals again, the high notes and it was. And then my favorite was Trouble in the Shadows.
Right.
The piano, very bluesy kind of. I love that.
Yeah, it's got that sort of rock and roll honky tonk piano.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Now that was written by the same woman who wrote "You Could Have Been With Me."
What a difference!
Leah Malfred, her name.
Yeah,
she's Australian.
And she was a rock singer herself, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, she was in a group called Ragnarok, I think is how you pronounce it, who were like a sort of alt prog rock band who had supported Elton John at one point, actually, in Australia. And she came to the UK to sign a record deal with Rocket Records, Elton's label, which never, things didn't work out, but she was in the UK pitching songs and writing songs and got a connection with Christopher Neal. And so, these two tracks that she had demoed, Trouble in the Shadows and You Could Have Been With Me, ended up on the Sheena album.
Amazing.
When I spoke to Nia about it, she was like, she'd never heard of Sheena Easton. Who is the person? I don't know.
Right.
Why do I want my songs to go to this person no one's ever heard of? So of course, she didn't really know, and then it ends up becoming You Could Have Been With Me.
She was happy.
Oh, yeah. At the end of the day, it's getting played in the U.S.
Yeah.
We could talk about Sheena all day long with you, Adam. But just so everybody knows, we are going to drop where they can purchase the vinyl. At the end of the show, you'll see it in the links.
Right.
And obviously, Sheena's not the only thing you're working on, Adam.
No, there have been other things. Yes.
Hey, tell us about Beverley Craven, because that box set is incredible.
Oh, thank you. There it is. You got your... Yes. Well, Beverley Craven is a name that... people in Britain will remember her well because she had a huge hit in the early 90s with a song called Promise Me.
Which is incredible. I love that song. It's just, her voice is so soothing.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And she's kind of like, well, one of her big influences was a singer called Judy Zook. And you can hear that in her. But you can hear elements of, I don't know, who would you compare her to?
I you know what I think? I hear a little bit of Baja. A little bit of
right, yeah.
I got Enya too. Enya a little bit, and
Enya, yeah, like those singer-songwriters, but a little jazzy.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little jazzy element or some of the stuff. Yeah, she's a great singer.
What was the other breakout? Swing Out Sister.
Oh yes, yeah. Corrine was the name of that thing. Yeah. So Beverley came out and has this huge debut album, huge in Britain and Europe. But it never happened, and she was going to become. It didn't ever happen in America because she was pregnant. She told me the story actually. She met with Tommy Mottola in America, head of the phone at the time, her label. She was on Epic Records, and Tommy was all into. They set up a kind of showcase. They were going to green light this huge launch for her. It had already broken in Britain and been across Europe. She had a hit. So it was like, now let's focus on America.
What year was this?
91, I think, when it was going to happen in America. And then she found out she was pregnant literally the same day, just as she was about to go on stage at this showcase.
Wow.
And, oh my God, I've got to tell all these people that this ain't going to happen.
Did Mariah Carey get her pregnant?
Yes, Mariah's up to her tricks again. No, but she was. Beverley's quite a sort of introverted person. She's like a singer-songwriter type. She's not like to be a huge star.
No, she wouldn't be competing with Mariah.
No, and she was quite conflicted about all the spotlight and stuff anyway. So when there was no like conflict. She's like, oh, great, I have a baby and I want to do this. So but it kind of did, in a sense, derail her international career.
Mm-hmm.
So she had one really huge first album. A second album did really, really well, but then a big gap because this collection is a collection of her first 3 albums on Epic, and then the third one came out maybe like 6 years later. She'd had 2 other children.
Yeah,
raising them, and so by the time the third album came out, it kind of was like commercially it like dropped off a bit. But the quality is there throughout. She's writing all the songs herself. Performing
her transition from the slow songs and the up tempo ones, it's effortless.
Yeah, and beautifully produced. It was produced by Paul Sam Smith, who did people like Carly Simon and who else did he do? I forget. Various singer-songwriter type people in the 70s. So it had a real warm acoustic sound to it. She's got a beautiful voice, they're great songs. I mean, so the idea behind this was to package together her first 3 albums and add a lot of bonus material. So there were like B-sides and different versions of songs, live versions, all that kind of stuff.
Was she a model?
No, she was never a model, no.
Oh, because she's beautiful.
She is. Yeah,
beautiful, and a really nice, down to earth person. And she still tours now. She had a long period after this, where she kind of semi-retired, was doing a few gigs occasionally, and then she started putting out records independently a few years ago.
She did a collaborative project too, right, with 2 other.
That's the thing that's really brought her back in quite a big way on the live circuit.
right.
She's been doing these tours with her original inspiration, Jimmy Thorpe, and the great Julia Forden. She's better known in America, isn't she? She's had
a couple of
them. Did a thing called Woman to Woman. And in the last, they did it once, they did really well, they did an album, they did a second tour, and they were joined by Rumour.
Oh, yeah. Rumour, yeah. She's great.
People compare her to Karen Carpenter a lot.
Yes. That first album especially, yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
And actually, all her records have been really good. They haven't necessarily been heard. That first album was fantastic. Yeah, it was slow.
Yeah,
great record. So, Beverley Craven, great singer-songwriter, not a little bit underrated. Certainly not known in America, really. But
no, if Ike and I haven't heard of her, then she's not known in America.
But wow,
this was a pleasant surprise. Like I was listening to it, and I was like, I'm shocked that I never heard of her before.
And we appreciate you, getting us into Beverley, because she's really so relaxing for me. I'm like, I love listening to her voice. It's so soothing.
Yeah, she's good, isn't she? Really.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, the thing is, when you talk to her, she's such a down to earth person. Like I said, she's really like, no, my voice is shit on there.
Way.
Oh yeah, her voice is great. Yeah.
Great.
Oh, well, maybe we'll have her on with you. We could push the box set more.
Yeah, maybe I could try and get somebody to do it.
That would be amazing.
Ask her.
Yeah, definitely love her. And then also too, Beverley, we'll put the link up for where to purchase that in the podcast. And you're working on another project, or is it out for the
Weather Girls?
Yes,
Weather Girls just came out, which is here.
Awesome.
Tell us about this.
Well, so this was a project I did for a label called Soul Music Records, which is distributed through Cherry Red, and a guy called David Nathan, who's a very well-known R&B soul music guru.
Okay.
Yeah, who's runs his label, Soul Music. I produced a set for his label, and so the idea was to do a compilation of all the Weather Girls albums that came out on Columbia Records in the 80s. In the 80s. And then also the one Martha Wash album.
Mm.
Anyone that knows anything about Weather Girls will know that originally they had become famous as the Two Tons.
Yes.
Even their full title, the Two Tons, was fun.
Uh-huh.
Except when they were auditioned and became backing singers for Sylvester in the 70s, and they were very much part of the whole Sylvester act and the records. They would perform together, they would sing together, they were very much up front. I mean, call them backing singers isn't really doing them justice, really. They were all
Right.
and they were a big part of that. And they started making records in their own right as the Two Tons. They made 2 albums on Fantasy Records, which are amazing.
Yeah.
And then they, at a certain point, they got offered this song. And you know that It's Raining Men story, I'm sure, which was said it was a song written by Paul Jabara.
Mm-hmm.
Paul Jabara being this incredible gay out, which was unusual at the time, disco songwriter and star in his own right, who wrote amazing songs for loads of people. Most famously, Last Dance for Donna Summer, No More Tears for Barbara Streisand and Donna Summer.
The main event.
The main event for Barbara Streisand, yeah. Work That Body for Diana.
Yeah.
So I'd lost these big hits. And he had this song called It's Raining Men, which he was convinced was a smash hit, but no one would record it. It was turned down by Donna Summer, it was turned down by Cher, it was turned down by Barbara Streisand, even though it would have fit quite well on the concept of the Wet album. But to be honest, I can't imagine any of those people really singing the song.
Right. That would have been perfect.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, didn't Paul Schaefer co-write this?
Did Paul Schaefer co-write It's Raining Men? That's a good question. I should know the answer to it, but I don't. I feel he did.
I believe he co-wrote it because I think that's why a lot of people thought he was gay.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Look there.
Paul Schaefer is the band director for David Letterman show.
Oh, and who could forget Shaka Khan forgetting the words to when she sang it that night? Do you remember that? On David Letterman?
No.
Oh, she was like tall, blonde, cheesecake. She was making up words as she went along.
Shaka Khan did a cover of it?
And she sang it because I think you're right with Paul Schaefer because they were doing some kind of a thing and she came on and sang it live on David Letterman show with Paul. And
oh, really?
You have to watch this version. It's hysterical.
Oh my God, I looked that up. I've never seen that. Yeah, so anyway, so Paul Schaefer and Paul Jabara and Schaefer wrote this song, It's Raining Men. No one would cut it. Eventually, Two Tons cut it for the Jabara album. It was put out. But because it was called It's Raining Men and the track was getting a certain, it was like, well, let's rename ourselves the Weather Girls.
Yeah.
Men.
Right.
So then on they were known as the Weather Girls. They did a whole album with Paul Jabara producing it. It's the first album of the Weather Girls, which is kind of amazing, actually. It's like a whole suite of disco songs that kind of blend one into the other and very much in the style of like what Donna Summer would have done in things.
Right.
That's a great album. And did 3 albums in total for Columbia. Success is probably the best of the 3, I would say. I really like the third one as well, which was produced in part by Full Force.
Oh, okay.
Sweet.
Big name in R&B at the time.
Yeah. And I love the contrast in the 2 voices between Martha Wash and what was her name? The second?
Izora Rose.
Izora. She had this deep, full, throaty, almost alto voice, and it was just such a good contrast when they did the harmonies together.
What blows me away is they always wanted to keep them behind, and they had the best voices, and they were always the background, like Helen Terry, right? I used to love Helen. Her voice was always, it was in the back, and they give her that little part when she really should have had her own, which is, I'm glad that the Weather Girls, had their own projects as well, but they were always trying to hide them.
Now, Martha Wash, the solo album that's included in on this, when was that recorded, that one?
I think that's 1990.
Okay. So that was after she was abused and used.
Well, yeah, I mean, 1992, I think it was. Well, for what you were saying, Ike, it's true. Yeah, people would be put in the back And even when you look at some of the promotion for the Weather Girls, you'll see how. I mean, they would go along with a joke and they'd make fun of their weight and stuff.
Right.
But the press was really brutal about them. Yeah, and so it got to with Martha Wash. She had recorded lots of things that her voice was used on lots of dance tracks.
Oh, right.
Gonna Make You Sweat by CNC.
Black
Everybody
Box.
Dance Now, and then
Black Box. She did
everybody. Yep. Like
all these tunes that became another one. Two Can Make It Right by
yeah.
Is that by Seduction?
Sweet Seduction. Yeah.
So she was having her voice on the radio, and her voice was being used by producers.
Yeah.
Uncredited, no money, no credit, and so she went through a sort of case with a lot of these. But I think that was the consequence of CNC Music Factory on Columbia Records. I think part of the settlement really was that she would have a solo RCA rather. It was part of Sony. I think part of it was that she'd get a solo deal to go. So she ended up doing the solo record, which came out in the early 90s and was a big success. On the club in America, the title track "Carry On" was like, I think she had like two.
Oh yeah, that was a hit. Yeah,
dance club hits in America.
Yeah, but what a shame that once she became the solo artist, she wasn't noticed as much as when she was like in the group singing background.
Right.
I thought that was sad.
Yeah. And it's still like, well, I mean, in fact, they had a singer in CNC. They had a singer called Zelma, like a singer who would be in the videos lip syncing Martha's parts.
Yeah.
So, really spoke to the kind of I don't know.
That the marketing and the promoting to get the song out there, they did anything they could to make it appetizing.
Absolutely, and it's interesting. Yeah, all those tricks that were going on. I mean, that was also the era of
It's just crazy. I mean, Mike, do you remember the "You're My One and Only True Love" by Seduction?
Yeah.
Like that was her. Like, and
this blows my mind. I mean, and then they would have people like Gary Coleman lip syncing, and I'm like, that's not Gary, that's Martha Wash. It's like, come on, we don't believe it.
It's interesting because in that era,
it's insane that they got away with that,
right?
Well, that was also the era of Milli Vanilli as well, wasn't it? This was a time when video and MTV had become huge. It was starting in the 80s. By the night, it was huge. Everything was about the image was paramount. So it was like we want people who. So it didn't matter that Milli Vanilli were, they're good looking. Let's cast them as the front of this,
right?
And that whole thing really, it's so different now. Well,
right.
Everything now is about authenticity. People can't well in the same way because everyone's on social media and their true self. There's no the curtain has been, way.
Look what they did to poor Paula Abdul in that one song, "Promise of a New Day." They stretched her out because they thought she gained a little bit of weight, in the video.
Yeah.
It was really horrible when you think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So a different time. But people like Martha Wash, and not just her, but also like people like Lolita Holloway.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Right on Time. Yeah.
Right.
Whose voices would just be lifted by some producer. They'll do some session, they'll find a sample, and they'll just use it without any. And the actual singer would be getting no credit, no money. Have someone else lip syncing to them on television, and someone would find out when they heard it on the TV or saw the video on TV. That's when they found out it was their voice. It's outrageous.
Yeah, terrible.
Well, I can't wait to hear that box set because I mean, she is legendary. Anyone who loves that R&B, I mean, those classic R&B vocals over a dance beat, you got to check that one out because she's
a great singer. I mean, and Azora, like you say, Azora, when they sung together, had that contrasting voice that really played. Yeah, and they're great albums.
Could you hold it up again, Adam? And then can people get that on Amazon?
It'll be on Amazon, and it'll be on the Cherry Red's website itself.
Cherry Red, good.
We'll
be sure to put that right in the listing too.
There they are.
Yeah, classic.
Yeah,
classic Martha Azora.
Right.
I think you can see a good interview with her on Arsenio Hall on YouTube.
Oh, I'll have to check that out.
All of this, yeah.
Ooh,
yeah.
The drama and everything that went behind it. Oh,
so, yeah.
Yes, I'm in.
Yeah. I remember interviewing her once, actually, Martha Wash, when she was, because she then, ironically, she ended up joining CNC Factory.
What?
Oh, wow.
Drama had happened, and her voice used part of the, I think it might have been part of the settlement they had with her. She became, by this time, their second album, I think. And I went to Paris to interview them, and the tension, there was tension is an understatement to say there was tension.
Really? In the interview with you, or?
Yeah. Between the members of the band.
Oh, yeah.
Martha was very much like.
Yeah.
There was a frostiness.
Yeah. Well, because she had the talent.
Well, gosh, yeah, she had talent. I mean, Camillus and Cole were incredibly talented. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. But obviously there was this.
But were they touring with the?
Yeah.
Civillas and Cole were touring with the CNC. I know it was their band, but I thought they had just people going out and they were just CNC because they.
I saw them do a. I might make it up. Did I? I thought I saw them do a show. They were in Paris doing promotion for the record.
Okay.
I went to speak to them as a group, and I remember them being all squashed onto this settee together.
Okay. Yeah.
Willis, Cole, Zelma, and Martha. It was all like really uncomfortable. But and I feel that I saw them do some kind of performance. How much they performed on stage together, I don't know.
Right. They were so in demand at that time as producers. I mean, they were just
it
seemed like everyone wanted to work with them at that time.
Yeah, CNC did.
Mariah too, I think.
Yeah, Mariah Carey. They did her second album.
Yeah.
Second and third album, actually.
Yes, they worked on. Yeah, and I think they did stuff with like Lisa and Cult Jam.
Lisa, yeah. Yes.
Oh my God, those were just great times.
Yeah.
Now we got Justin Bieber.
Yay. Yeah.
Adam, thank you so much for joining us again.
That's okay.
Easton, Vinyl, you could have been with me. Available now. We're going to drop the links for this Beverley Craven's box set and the Weather Girls box set. You are a pleasure every time you're on. We love you so much, Adam.
We love Adam.
And we expect you're coming back again for September.
Yes, I'll be back. Yeah.
And you'll be talking about more projects you'll be working on. We can't wait to hear that.
Yes, by then I might know more. Yeah, there's a few irons in the fire for other things as well, and maybe by then I'll be able to talk about them.
Sweet. Thank you so much, Adam.
Okay, thank you.
Wait, goodbye.
Bye.